Today's lesson is Make Your Mark, How to Leave the World a Better Place Through Travel. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Candice.
And today we're going to be talking about travel, which fortunately we can do more of as those restrictions from COVID start to be lifted. And, of course, lots of people want to travel the world and people have cabin fever. But, of course, we all know that traveling sometimes can be bad for the environment. I guess there are ways to make the world a better place through travel. There are ways to contribute to the societies of the countries you visit.
Yeah, increasingly, I think, especially after COVID-19 pandemic, people want to do what they can to improve the places that they visit, especially to offset or to balance out the environmental impacts that their travel causes.
Indeed. So, of course, we have typical tourism where you travel wherever you want to and you check the place out and take pictures and eat food and go home. Then there's ecotourism where you go check out more natural areas and things like that. But today we're going to be talking about something else called regenerative tourism, and we'll find out what that is right now. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and we'll be right back.
Make your mark. How to leave the world a better place through travel. Ask a group of people about their interests, and chances are good that the majority of them will include travel on their list. However, large numbers of visitors can place huge strains on the places they visit. Enter regenerative tourism, a solution allowing people to satisfy their desire for discovery while leaving their travel destinations better than they found them. Regenerative tourism goes beyond sustainable travel, which aims to do no harm, by engaging visitors in much-needed conservation and community improvement projects. In addition to performing such services, visitors get in-depth knowledge about the local culture and environment. People who have been on such trips report feeling a deeper sense of connection and fulfillment than they'd get from an ordinary tour, returning home gratified to have done something meaningful.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到形容词 sustainable 指的是永续的、可持续发展的。举例来说 ，Researchers are looking for a sustainable method of producing electricity. 研究人员正在寻找永续发电的方法。或者 Some industry analysts question whether Apple's success is sustainable without Steve Jobs. 有些产业分析师质疑，没有贾伯斯，苹果的成功是否能够持续发展？另外，补充这个字的动词 sustain, S-U-S-T-A-I-N, sustain， 它的意思是支持、维持或是承受。像是 It was difficult for the company to sustain the growth it experienced in its first 5 years. 对那间公司来说，要维持如同其头5年的成长是很难的。又或者是The country's economy could not sustain rapid growth for long without triggering inflation. 除非引起通货膨胀，要不然那个国家无法维持其经济长期的快速发展。接下来我们看到名词 community， 它的意思是社区、群体或是动植物的群落。例如 The new garden on the end of the street has done wonders in bringing our community together. 街尾的新花园对于社区凝聚力有极佳的效果。又或者说 Some members of the business community were upset by the new climate deal. 一些商业界人士对于新的气候协定感到不满。再来我们看到单字 fulfillment， 它是名词，指的是满足、成就、完成或是实现。我们可以说 You will find fulfillment in life if you allow yourself to follow your dreams. 如果你允许自己追随梦想，你就会在生活中感到满足。也可以说 Allison says that playing the piano gives her a lot of fulfillment in life because she loves music. Allison 说，因为她热爱音乐，所以弹钢琴带给她的生活非常多的满足。另外，这个字去掉字尾 ment 就会变成动词 fulfill， 意思是执行、履行或是完成。像是She finally fulfilled her dream of becoming a doctor. 她终于实现了成为医生的梦想。又或者是 The Prime Minister fulfilled his promise to raise the minimum wage. 该首相实践了提高最低薪资的承诺。
Okay, so today we're trying to tell you to make your mark in the world. Make your mark means to make a contribution or do something that you can be remembered for. And yes, indeed, you want to leave the world a better place through travel. Now, here in the first paragraph, it says, ask a group of people about their interests, and chances are good that the majority of them will include travel on their list. Indeed, lots of people want to travel the world. That's what it's all about. That's why we're alive, to check out different parts of the world and see different things and meet different people and try different food and stuff. Lots of people would like to do that.
Yes, and I'm one of them. And if these travelers are anything like me, we want our presence in a different country to be a positive presence, because before COVID-19, I think there was a problem of over-tourism, which means that too many people flocked to certain locations, especially places in Thailand where they had pristine beaches and oceans, but because there were so many people flocking there, they caused all sorts of environmental and pollution problems. And then when the pandemic came, there were no people and nature was allowed to regenerate itself. So when we go back to these wonderful places now that we are allowed to travel, we need to consider the human impact of tourism.
Okay, so indeed lots of people want to travel, but again, large numbers of visitors can place huge strains on the places they visit. A strain just means something that causes a lot of pressure. It's a force, and of course, things can be affected negatively because of that force or because of that strain. Strain can be both countable and non-countable. Here it's being used as a countable noun. So we've got these huge strains, this large amount of pressure on the places those people visit. Well, enter regenerative tourism, a solution allowing people to satisfy their desire for discovery while leaving their travel destinations better than they found them. So enter regenerative tourism. That's when we're going to talk about regenerative tourism. To regenerate means to make something reborn, to make it alive again. Of course, here in Taiwan, if you want to have electricity, you need to generate electricity. But if you regenerate something, you bring it about again. So again, we've got things going on in these different parts of the world, and we want them to sort of give rebirth to themselves. So we want to regenerate them or bring them back again.
When we say enter, we're also introducing the idea of something new or as a solution to something. So there's a problem and there's a solution, so enter the solution.
Okay, so this regenerative tourism is a solution which allows people to satisfy their desire for discovery, and they can also leave their travel destinations better than they found them instead of leaving them worse. So if everybody travels to beaches in Hawaii, for example, and leaves a lot of pollution there, well, they're leaving the place worse than they found those places. So if they go there and maybe clean up the beach or something or do some work there, they can actually leave the place better than when they found it in the first place. Now, regenerative tourism goes beyond sustainable travel, which aims to do no harm by engaging visitors in much-needed conservation and community improvement projects. So, of course, we've got something called sustainable travel, whereas people go to places, but they don't damage those places. They just leave it the way it was, and they go home, and nobody's harmed by that. But regenerative tourism is a little different. It goes beyond sustainable travel. It actually wants to help improve those areas instead of just leaving them the way they were.
And I think that's a very laudable intention and goal, because I think too many places were damaged in the past by unsustainable tourism and travel. So we want to be able to enjoy these wonderful places. There are so many places to see in the world over a sustained amount of time, over a longer period of time. But we don't want to cause any ecological damage, or we don't want to exhaust the natural resources, and we don't want to pollute those places. So we want to take it one step further, and regenerative tourism is that one step further. And the way we're going to do do that is to engage with the community who lives there and try to uplift that community. Community, the people that live there, the people that make up a society.
Okay, and in addition to performing such services, visitors get in-depth knowledge about the local culture and environment. So that's a win-win situation. You've got two things in addition to, but also something else. So you can not only perform services for the place you go to, but you can also learn a lot of things. You get in-depth knowledge about the local culture, and therefore you can educate all the people back home about the place so that they don't have bad stereotypes about that place, and everybody will get along well in the future.
And people also do it for their own personal satisfaction and enrichment. The paragraph goes on to say, people who have been on such trips report feeling a deeper sense of connection and fulfillment than they'd get from an ordinary tour, returning home gratified to have done something meaningful. I think that satisfies the basic human desire to add meaning to things, to have a meaningful life, to have meaningful interactions. So when these people go on these regenerative tours, they do tend to feel a sense of fulfillment. They feel gratified. Being fulfilled is just feeling really satisfied, and gratified is another variation of being fulfilled. You're happy, you're satisfied.
Right, you might want to run a marathon, for example, for personal fulfillment, or you might go to a Buddhist monastery for religious fulfillment. And yes, indeed, you can get that connection and that fulfillment more than you would get from an ordinary tour, and you can be gratified when you go back home. To be gratified just means satisfied and fulfilled and just happy about what you've done. And, of course, you'll feel that you've made a contribution to the world. Okay, let's move on now to the second part. We will listen first.
Though this form of tourism is still getting off the ground, several organizations around the world already offer excursions to those interested in giving back. On Chincoteague Island in the U.S. state of Virginia, for example, people taking part in the Road Scholar program can help protect the area's wild horses by removing barbed wire from their habitat. Over on the other side of the country, First Nature Tours enlists visitors in restoring a large section of forest in Central Oregon that burned down in 2020. After a morning of hard work rebuilding trails or planting trees, guests are treated to an afternoon of outdoor activities like mountain biking.
最后第二部分我们看到动词 restore 指的是使复育、使复原或是使恢复。举例来说 Taylor has successfully restored the local firefly population. Taylor 已经成功复育出当地的萤火虫数量。或是 The historic boat has been restored to its former glory. 那艘具历史意义的船被恢复到其往日光彩了。另外补充这个字的名词 restoration, R-E-S-T-O-R-A-T-I-O-N, restoration. 它的意思是修复或是重建。我们可以说 The restoration of the old church took several years to complete. 那个旧教堂的修复历时数年才完成。也可以说The company specialized in the restoration of antiques. 该公司专门从事古董修复。
Okay, so again, we're talking about regenerative tourism. And though this form of tourism is still getting off the ground, even though it's just starting, several organizations around the world already offer excursions to those interested in giving back. An excursion basically is a kind of trip.
Yeah, I remember when I was at school, we went on several excursions. So those could be daily trips. So we'd go to the beach or we'd go to the mountain or we'd go hiking. So those would be excursions that we look forward to. And when you're on your holiday, maybe you will take a trip around the island that you're visiting, or you'll take an excursion to a lagoon. Or on these excursions, you'll actually do something to improve the areas that you visit. So you'll have fun environment, and you'll be doing something to improve the area.
Okay, let's go to an island near Virginia in the U.S. On Chincoteague Island, or Chincoteague Island in the U.S. state of Virginia, for example, people taking part in the Rhodes Scholar program can help protect the area's wild horses by removing barbed wire from their habitat. So evidently they have too much barbed wire on this island, so those horses cannot go wherever they want to. They run into that barbed wire. Barbed wire has those little pieces of wire that are sharp, and you can get cut if you run into them. And I guess they need help getting rid of all that barbed wire so the horses can run free in their habitat. Habitat, of course, is where an animal lives.
And they have lots of habitats for animals, and they're trying to create a very biodiverse place. Over on the other side of the country, First Nature Tours enlists visitors in restoring a large section of forest in Central Oregon that burned down in 2020. So another tour group on the other side of the country of the United States, they try to engage their visitors in helping to restore a forest that has been ravaged by fire. What that means is that usually we enlist someone to do a service or a duty. So a lot of people will enlist in the army, for example, before World War II. Young soldiers enlisted. But when you enlist someone, it's to do a service. It's not necessarily a paid job. So they enlist visitors in helping to restore, bring back the original forest that was there before it burned down in 2020.
Right, and they want to restore this forest to its original condition. To restore, again, means to return something to its original state or original form. Like many years ago, I bought an old 1964 Chevrolet Corvair, but it was rusty and it was not running properly, so I had it restored. I brought it back to its original condition and sold it at a profit. So they want to help this forest by maybe planting new trees or something. And after a morning of hard work rebuilding trails or planting trees, guests are treated to an afternoon of outdoor activities like mountain biking. So indeed, you can tell your friends all about this. Hey, I went to Oregon and I helped replant trees in this forest, and afterwards we got to go mountain biking as a reward. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that wonderful? Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third and final part.
In a less traveled part of the world, Australian company Intrepid Travel gives international tourists the once-in-a-lifetime chance to get a taste of life in a remote village in Myanmar. Part of the money visitors bring in goes towards supporting the villagers, and the company makes sure its operations remove more carbon from the environment than they produce. Meanwhile, a stay at Lapa Rios Lodge, located in the middle of the Costa Rican rainforest, helps fund efforts to protect biodiversity and develop nearby communities. During their visit, guests can learn about the lodge's regeneration practices and take educational tours about plant-based medicine. All travel has impacts. So the next time you travel, consider engaging in regenerative tourism to ensure that you leave your destination better off than it was before your visit.
Okay, let's move on now to the third and final part. Again, we're talking about regenerative tourism. In a less traveled part of the world, Australian company Intrepid Travel gives international tourists the once-in-a-lifetime chance to get a taste of life in a remote village in Myanmar, which is a large country next to Thailand. Lots of people would like to go there, and this company from Australia would give you an opportunity to get to know life in a village in Myanmar.
And part of the money visitors bring in goes towards supporting the villagers, and the company makes sure its operations remove more carbon from the environment than they produce. So they are environmentally minded, and their activities are designed to be sustainable and to remove CO2 or carbon from the atmosphere.
Carbon, of course, is an element. Its atomic number is 6, and of course, it's kind of the villain in climate change and global warming. So, of course, we want to remove carbon from the environment. and they want to remove more than they actually produce. Meanwhile, at the same time, a stay at Lapa Rios Lodge, located in the middle of the Costa Rican rainforest, helps fund efforts to protect biodiversity and develop nearby communities. So now we're shifting our attention from Myanmar to Costa Rica. That's a country in Central America. It's tropical, so they have a rainforest there, and you can go there as a traveler and help protect the biodiversity there. Biodiversity means you've got all sorts of different living things living together, so you have this great ecosystem where everything can survive.
And that's a great environment for the guests, great for leisure activities, but they get to learn about the environment that they're in. And during their visits, guests can learn about the lodge's regeneration practices and take educational tours about plant-based medicine. So they get to understand how plants and how the different animals and organisms work together.
Indeed. So that's in Costa Rica. Lots of people want to travel there, and you can actually be involved with the environment if you go there with this program. And the final part of our lesson for today says, all travel has impacts. Indeed, we do influence the areas we travel to, either in a negative or a positive way, maybe in a neutral way sometimes. So the next time you travel, consider engaging in regenerative tourism to ensure that you leave your destination better off than it was before your visit. Your destination, of course, is where you're going. So if I want to travel to Guadalajara in Mexico, well, that is my destination. That's where I'm going.
And I hope we'll be able to go to more places and do no harm.
All right, so all of you can think about your destination for your next holiday or your next vacation, and maybe you too can make your mark on the world and leave the world a better place before you leave it. Okay, it's time now for us to leave you and listen to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要来练习篇章结构的题型。那我们先来看4个选项的句子。A. Though this form of tourism is still getting off the ground, several organizations around the world already offer excursions to those interested in giving back. 句子里面 get off the ground 字面意思是让什么离开地面，它就有起飞啊、使升空的意思，还可以用来指说可能是事业啊、活动等等开始进行，正在起步。那么 excursion它可以表达短程出游、游览、远足的意思，所以这个句子就是在说，虽然这种旅游形式还在起步阶段，但世界各地一些组织已经向那些有兴趣回馈的人提供短程旅行。我们可以推测这个句子所在的段落可能会具体说明这些组织如何进行这样的旅游形式。好，再看到 B. During their visit,Guests can learn about the lodge's regeneration practices and take educational tours about plant-based medicine. 句子里面这个 regeneration practices 就是指再生做法 ，practice 在这边当名词表示惯例、惯常做法。那么复合形容词 plant-based 表示以植物为主的，所以它就是在表达说，在参观期间，宾客可以学到旅社的再生做法和参加有关草药的教育之旅。这边有一个关键词是 the lodge， 它意味着前方的叙述会提到 lodge。好，再看到 C 选项，他说 In addition to performing such services, visitors get in-depth knowledge about the local culture and environment. 除了做这类服务外，游客还可以深入了解当地文化和环境。那从这个句子可以推测，它前面的叙述应该会提到某些服务。再看到 D 选项 Enter regenerative tourism, a solution allowing people to satisfy their desire for discovery while leaving their travel destinations better than they found them. 开始从事再生旅游，这是一种能让人满足他们对探索的渴望，同时让他们旅游目的地比他们到达之前更好的解决办法。好，句子里面这个 enter 表示开始、从事或是进入，就相当于什么什么登场的意思，所以可以推测这个句子可能会在文章的前段向读者 开始介绍 regenerative tourism 再生旅游。好，那我们接着就来看题目吧。好，来看看第一个空格，它出现在第一段的句尾。它前面有说啦，许多人都喜欢旅游，然后空格前一句使用了转折语 however 然而大量游客可能会带给旅游地点很大的负担。再来文章下一段就开始介绍什么是 regenerative tourism 再生旅游，可以知道空格里面最适合填入是带出再生旅游的内容，那最适合的答案就是 D。这个选项就包含了 regenerative tourism 这个关键词，然后也介绍再生旅游登场，说明它是一种可以两全其美的解决方法。第二个空格呢，它前方句子提到说，再生旅游不只是不造成伤害的永续旅游，而是借由让游客参与保育与社区改善计划的旅游形态。那空格后方的句子又提到说，参加过这类旅行的人表示感受到一种更深刻的联系感还有满足感。这边可以推测空格是要填入再生旅游让旅客有如此感受的原因，那最适合的答案就要选 C。 好，那 C 选项里面它有说到 in addition to performing such services， 这就是指说前一句提到的那个保育和社区改善计划，也去表达说除此之外游客还能深入了解当地文化和环境。好，第三个空格是出现在下一个段落的第一句，那它很有可能是那个段落的主题句哦。然后看到空格后方它用到 for example 例如，然后就提到了两个再生旅游的例子，分别是在美国维吉尼亚州移除带刺铁丝网来保护野马的计划，然后还有富裕俄勒冈州中部在2020年被烧毁的大片森林。因此可以断定空格就是第三段的主题句，所以最适合答案选 A， 去说明这个旅游形式虽然还在起步阶段，可是已经有一些组织开始在提供一些旅游行程给有兴趣的人了。好，第四个空格是出现在第四段的最后一句，那空格前一句它有提到说，入住位于哥斯达黎加热带雨林中部的拉帕利欧斯旅社有助于为保护生物多样性和发展附近社区的行动提供资金。好，那么选项 B 里面呢就有提到关键词 The Lodge， The Lodge 指的就是我们刚刚说到那间拉帕利欧斯旅社，所以正确答案就是选 B 咯。以上是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Strain. The temporary loss of power due to the storm placed a great strain on the hospital. Sustainable. Sustainable farming practices would allow the land to continue producing crops long into the future. Community. The people of the small community work together to keep the local streets clean. Fulfillment. Sheila found a sense of personal fulfillment through her hobby of writing poetry. Habitat. The zoo kept the animals in spaces that were as similar as possible to their natural habitats. Restore. After the car accident, Bill needed an operation to restore his ability to walk. Carbon. The diamond was formed from carbon that was placed under high temperature and pressure levels. Destination. Amy checked with the bus driver to make sure that the bus would take her to her desired destination.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Candice.
See you next time.